right. Looks like we're up and running on YouTube, Facebook. Looks like we are potentially good to go as usual. Facebook running a little bit slower. Facebook, pretty terrible. All right, there we go. We are live on Facebook. Welcome into tonight's Connor in coverage. My name's Connor Riley. We wrapped up talking to Kirby Smart, Aziz Ojulari, and Nakobe Dean about 10 minutes ago. There were a couple questions about JT Daniels, a couple questions about black jerseys, a couple questions about various position groups. By all accounts, Georgia, it looks like they're going to play on Saturday against Missouri this time. So I'll be interested to see sort of what it looks like for the first time seeing them since the Florida game 2 weeks ago. Give everyone a chance to come on in. Philip Overstreet, good to see you. Matt Talley, welcome in. Shelton Tucker on YouTube, good to see you guys. Hope you guys are all having a nice Tuesday evening here. It's starting to get a little bit chillier here in Atlanta. Not cold, but still a little bit colder than the usual sunny and 70 that we've had the good fortune of having the past couple of weeks. We'll be talking questions, comments you guys have. I know Shmuel Munden Jr. is set to announce tomorrow. We're about a little over 13 hours from that. Jeff Santel and myself will both be there for that at their Paulding County High School. I'll be interested to sort of see what Munden ends up doing and what he says about his commitment. He is pretty clearly one of the biggest players of need for Georgia in this class, just given what they set to lose at linebacker. Monty Rice is obviously in his final year with the program, and that is a position of need. And Munden is the top-rated linebacker in the state, according to 247 Sports Recruiting Services. I know there's some talk about Barrett Carter as well in terms of who is the better player there. But Munden is a guy you can't really afford to miss out on. And if Georgia lands him, it means they'll have landed the top 3 players in the state for the 2021 recruiting cycle. That is something Kirby Smart has not done before. And I think, it's funny. I'll probably have something on this on Thursday, but the whole, does Kirby need to recruit the state of Georgia better? Last year, they only get 2 of the top 25. This year, they're going to get the top. There's a chance they get the top 3 prospects, along with a whole number of other top 10 prospects. I think if they land Munden and Nyland Green, they could sign 6 of the top 10, which is exactly what you're looking for when you have a talent-rich state like Georgia. We'll get into that a little bit on the back end here. A lot of stuff coming in. Yeah, there's a lot of comments already. Michael Morrow, looking forward to seeing JT Daniels this Saturday. Yeah, that seems to be the dominant storyline. Ben Cleveland sort of, I don't want to say let the cat out of the bag, but he at least untied the string and the cat could find its way out. Talking about how JT Daniels had sort of been preparing for this moment. He said that on Monday. By all indications, Daniels was going to be the guy who started for Georgia last week against Missouri. Now, tonight, Kirby Smart did come out and say that Stetson Bennett's shoulder is looking a little bit better and he was able to do more in practice. Smart, once again, intentionally vague on quarterback. He said Bennett, Daniels, Mathis, Beck were all taking first-team reps. So we'll sort of see how it goes, but my expectation and understanding right now is that we're going to see JT Daniels for the first time in a Georgia uniform take the field on Saturday. And as far as expectations, I know BA has talked about this quite a bit on his show and his platform, and I'm curious what you guys think or expect. The biggest thing for me, I don't look for him to go out there and play like Mac Jones or Kyle Trask or Justin Fields. If he can just go out there, play mistake-free football, as Kirby Smart has said, just make the layups, make the easy open throws that are there. That's going to be the biggest thing for me. There's not a yardage number or a touchdown or point total. It's just, is he hitting the open guys? Because I think we've seen from Todd Monken and this offense that they're able to scheme up and get guys open. And if you hit your layups, as Kirby Smart has said pretty routinely over these last couple of weeks, that's going to just lead to easier offense. And Stetson Bennett at the beginning of the year, he was hitting those layups for the most part against Auburn, against Tennessee. And then against Alabama in the second half, he stopped hitting them and hasn't really hit them since. The Florida game, most clearly, just there were a lot of open players, and both Bennett and Mathis couldn't seem to make those throws, keep them open. So we'll sort of see what it looks like on Saturday from Daniels, how accurate he is. That's really the biggest thing to me. And it's not even necessarily completion percentage, which can be a little bit propped up sometimes. It just, is he hitting the open guy? Is he not turning the ball over? If he's doing that, I think this Georgia offense has enough athletes to make things pretty easy and certainly dominate Mississippi State, along with the final 4 teams on the schedule there, or at least 3. I'm not totally certain of the status of Missouri yet. They have not scheduled that game. There's a chance it can be played on the 19th. So we'll see where things go from there with Daniels. I think the big thing is just, how mobile does he look? The knee injury obviously has been part of the reason he has not seen the field, though I don't believe that's the biggest reason. I just think they felt that Stetson Bennett gave him a very good chance to win, and he did against Auburn and against Tennessee. So, yeah, Michael Porter, we'll see how JT looks and plays on Saturday. And ultimately, with the Georgia quarterback competition and going forward, I don't expect it to be over unless Daniels just comes up and tears things up. But until those questions get answered against a Florida and Alabama of the world, I think you're still going to continue to see those issues persist and sort of follow the Georgia program and Kirby Smart. So, yeah, Mark Gray brings up hopefully Georgia gets a big lead and you can put Carson Beck in there. There's been a lot of people calling for him. I never really expected Beck to come in and play this year. I think the plan was always to maybe sit him a year and sort of see where his development takes him. So we'll see what the quarterback situation's like. Quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see Stetson Bennett or Dwan Mathis as well. It's just that's sort of how this position has gone this year for Georgia. So, it's hard to say enjoy it at this point with Georgia being 4-2 and looking on the outside of not playing in the SEC championship game for the first time since 2016. But Daniel's performance, if he gets in, how he looks, I think that's going to be at least something that's interesting to watch for in this game on Saturday. I know from the Mississippi State side, they have not been very good. They're 2-4, and one of those wins was against Vanderbilt in the game. They didn't look all that impressive. The other one obviously came the first game of the year against LSU when we thought LSU might still be pretty decent, but KJ Costello has just not been the player that I certainly thought he was going to be. He struggled with interceptions. I don't even think he's going to play on Saturday. He's still recovering from a head injury he suffered against Alabama. And even before that injury, I think teams had sort of figured out this Mississippi State offense. You just have to drop 8 guys in coverage, rush 3, and Mississippi State's offense will sort of self-implode. Because the thing, you saw this with Mike Leach's offense out there in Washington State every year they played Washington. Washington just had better athletes than them, and they knew how to defend them. And it's pretty clear that a lot of those teams have taken that Washington blueprint. And when you're at a school like Mississippi State in the SEC, the Pac-12, you can get away with not always necessarily having the best athletes because for so long the recruiting there has been a little bit down as a conference. So Oregon was a team that when they were recruiting right, they were beating Washington State. Washington definitely was doing that as well. So with Mississippi State, and I think part of the reason they've struggled and continue is that Leach's system. Kirby linked it to playing Georgia Tech's triple option, and I think that's a very interesting point and one I would make because you don't see they won't see another offense like this year in the way that it's run. And not run, but the way they throw the football so often, it's kind of hard to prepare for it, especially when Kirby's made his no bones about it. He loves to play man-to-man coverage, and you can't necessarily do that against this Mississippi State team. They're just going to ask you the best way to beat them, as we've seen time and time again this year. Rush 3, drop 8, play a zone, and just sort of hope that your guys – now, granted, they struggled against Florida, have sort of the eye discipline and sort of figure it out from there. So – that'll be interesting. I mentioned a little bit about KJ Costello. I wrote about him on Monday. He's, to me, sort of been a fascinating sliding doors moment. I asked Kirby on Monday, was there ever any contact with him because he was in the transfer portal last year? And Kirby had actually said, yes, we were in contact with him. Smart himself talked quite a bit with Costello. And it sounds like once Jamie Newman entered the transfer portal, that was the guy that Georgia really went all in on and went after, and ultimately they end up landing him. And when this game was first announced in August, to me, it was sort of this will be a chance to sort of see, I don't want to say Georgia necessarily passed on Costello, but I believe they really wanted him. They could have had him, and they picked Newman. And give me a second here. They picked Newman. Newman opts out. That first week of the season, Costello balls out, sets the SEC record for passing yards in a game, throws 5 touchdowns. But as I mentioned before, since that LSU game, 1 touchdown, 8 interceptions. He's been hurt. I don't think this season has gone the way it has for him, whereas I think if he was in Georgia or an alternate universe there where he doesn't opt out, and because with the way things have gone for him at Mississippi State, no one I don't think could blame him for deciding to do that. But you look at what Todd Monken likes in his offense. Now, obviously, the athleticism might not necessarily be there with Costello. Certainly, he's not the athlete that Newman was, or even Bennett and Mathis. He is much more, I think, of a JT Daniels pocket presence passer, but he's got a cannon for an arm. He's actually pretty accurate. He was more accurate in 2018 than JT Daniels was. 29 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 65% completion percentage, while also leading the Pac-12 in yards per attempt. And he was in a very complex Stanford offense, not necessarily complex in the route trees, but just the way, the verbiage. It was very much an old school NFL-style offense. And he, to me, had done some of the things that you look for in a quarterback, and I think could have fit very well. And it just sort of shows just how nothing has really gone according to plan this year for both Costello, Newman, Georgia, the quarterback position as a whole. It's really rather indicative of 2020, and I just thought it was a rather interesting sort of sliding doors moment to sort of see where things are and where things could have been. So take a few of your comments and questions here. Petey Wheatstraw on Facebook asks, hey, Connor, what's been the most frustrating to you about this season? I would probably say I don't know about frustrated, because Stetson Bennett looked good against Auburn. He looked good against Tennessee. He was doing enough to win. The thing that I don't want to say bothers, but you look back to that Kentucky game, they were very content to sort of just say, hey, we're going to run the football. Kentucky's not giving us a whole lot, and we're just going to get out of here with a 14-3, 21-3, 24-3 win. And they can't play that way against Florida and Alabama. You need to be explosive. You need to try and score as many points as you can in those games. So while I understand, hey, you just got to get a win and move on, I think that effort in particular, and obviously the loss to Florida is bad. The injuries are what the injuries are. I certainly think that played a factor in it. It's still the lack of evolution from this offense. And I think Monken has done a lot of really good things. I think you saw in the Florida game, he's done a good job getting guys open, especially when you consider the injuries this wide receiver core has had to deal with this year. Zamir White has looked really good these past 2 games. James Cook has been an effective weapon when used. Even Kendall Milton, a guy who I love more than anybody coming out, he's really impressed this year. So it's that lack of a consistent commitment to being an explosive offense all the time. You need to play that way against the Kentuckys, against the Mississippi States, against the Vanderbilts of the world. That way, when you absolutely need to do it against Alabama's and Florida's, that you are able to do it, because I think we sort of saw. Now, granted, Stetson's shoulder injury, how much that hurt him and the team, I'm just not quite sure. I think it says quite a bit that Bennett was clearly hurt, clearly injured, and they still went with him over Dwan Mathis. I think that said a lot at that point in time. So the thing for me, and P, to sort of spin your question forward, wins and losses don't carry a whole lot for me the rest of this year. If they go out, win the Peach Bowl, beat Cincinnati, great. I want to see this Georgia team consistently score, consistently move the ball, consistently have explosive plays in both the run and the pass game, and sort of look like those offenses that Clemson, Alabama, LSU a season ago, that those sort of teams display every single week. And if Georgia can do that, I think that gives me a lot more confidence going into 2021, whoever the quarterback ends up being. So that is sort of, to answer a long-winded way of answering your question, just I want to see this offense truly commit to being explosive every week against teams that they should beat. Because even you look back, that second half of the Auburn game, they were very content to just sort of run out the clock and run the ball and not sort of put things in harm's way. And while, yeah, they were up big in that game, that's a game where maybe, hey, you do take a few shots. You do try to create those explosive plays so that later in the year you're a little bit more repped and a little bit more comfortable and confident in trying to pull those things off. Let's see. Kenneth Wiggins, this is good. Good segue. And Jacob Phillips, I'm going to get to your question as well, because I think it interestingly ties in a roundabout way. South Carolina fired Will Muschamp on Sunday night. Muschamp 28-3 in his 5 seasons there. The wheels had sort of come off. They were 2-5 in they were 2-5 this year. They've lost 3 straight, given up 159 points in their last 3 games. Really, just a team that the wheels fell off for Muschamp. And I know in these COVID times, there was a lot of questions about financials and what that sort of means going forward. But they just felt it was time to move on. And with the season even being a little bit longer than it traditionally is, I think they wanted to get a jump start on the head coaching hire so that when National Signing Day does roll around, they have a guy in place and they can tell recruits, hey, this is the guy who's leading our program. Ray Tanner has come out and said he wants an offensive mind to sort of be the guy there. I think that's a very indicative comment of how one of the people who can shape college football sort of views where this sport is and where it is going. The biggest name in BA has talked about this at length. Hugh Freeze, it comes down to, does he want to leave Liberty? Does he think he can get a better job in South Carolina? I absolutely believe South Carolina should be South Carolina's top choice. He is by and by an offensive guy, an offensive guru. If you can win at a place like Ole Miss, I think you can contend at a place like South Carolina. Obviously, having to play Georgia, Florida, Texas A&M, Clemson every year, that's not a fun proposition. But if you're South Carolina, you make Hugh Freeze say no to you. From there, and I personally would not bet on Freeze going there. I think the things I would sort of look at, Billy Napier of Louisiana Lafayette, Jamie Chadwell, of Coastal Carolina, and Shane Beamer, who is the tight ends coach and former tight ends coach at Georgia as well. All those guys, Napier and Chadwell have that sort of head coaching experience. They're offensive guys. Napier, in particular, he's a guy who coached at Clemson. He knows the state, big-time recruiter at Alabama, a guy who has sort of waited to get a job. I believe he was a candidate last year at Baylor, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, a couple of those places. I think this would be a good move up from him from Louisiana Lafayette. The same can be said for Jamie Chadwell at Coastal Carolina, and they're just destroying folks, the Chanticleers. And then Shane Beamer's really interesting to me because he sort of gives off that sort of Sam Pittman-esque vibe that Arkansas has had a lot of success with, that LSU had success with. He's a position coach, but he's a sort of true lifelonger of the game. He's worked in college football for almost 2 decades now. He's obviously the son of Frank Beamer. He's worked with Kirby Smart, one of the best defensive coaches in the country. He's worked with Lincoln Riley, one of the best offensive coaches in the country. And he knows that area and program well. He served under Steve Spurrier there as a defensive backs coach for 4 years as an assistant. He has ties to the program. I think that'd be a very interesting hire if they maybe can't get a Freeze, a Napier, or a Chadwell. So I think that'd be something worth watching going forward as well. And conversely, tying that in sort of the thing to me that is most interesting about what this South Carolina ends up doing is, so how does this affect Gunnar Stockton's recruitment? Because he was committed to South Carolina. He has a very close relationship with Mike Bobo. Now, I will point out Connor Shaw, who is the brother of Stockton's head coach of Rayburn County, Jabo Shaw. He was promoted to an on-field assistant. He is now the quarterback's coach there at South Carolina. So what does Stockton end up doing? Does he back away and say, I'm reopening my recruitment, or does he stay loyal to South Carolina? If he does reopen his recruitment, what does that mean for Georgia and how they go about recruiting? Right now, there's not a whole lot of chatter about 2022 quarterbacks and what Georgia might do there. They have a 5-star quarterback committed in Brock Vandagriff. Vandagriff is the most talented quarterback Georgia has landed since it landed Justin Fields. And ultimately, I think he's probably a better quarterback than Jacob Eason or Jake Fromm were coming out of high school in terms of raw talent. One of the things that I've sort of touched on both here and other various spaces is that Kirby Smart has never really come out and said, hey, quarterback X, you're a guy. He didn't do it with Justin Fields. He didn't do it with Jake Fromm really either until he absolutely had to. Didn't do it Jamie Newman this year and hasn't done it yet with JT Daniels. And you look at some of the success that Clemson has had. They said, Trevor Lawrence, you're a guy, even though we had Kelly Bryant. Justin Fields, even though we had Tate Martell waiting in the wings, you're a guy. Even Mac Jones this offseason, they bring in Bryce Young, a 5-star quarterback, But they say, Mac Jones, you're our guy. And it's all worked out for those programs. I actually do believe that there is something to be said about choosing the quarterback position or coaching the quarterback position a little bit differently. I think there's something to be said for going out and saying, hey, this guy is our guy. We believe in him. He's going to be the face and leader of our program. And I think how Georgia goes about recruiting Stockton, and the first time around, Georgia finishes the runner-up to South Carolina there. I think how they go about recruiting Stockton, I think, is going to be really interesting to me to how they view sort of the long-term track of Brock Vandagriff. We can now sort of transition here to Vandagriff a little bit because I've seen a couple. Yeah, Craig Hill, we need to stick with Vandagriff. No more controversy. Vandagriff balling out this year at Prince Avenue Christian. I think he's got a good chance to lead that school to their first state football title. He is an early enrollee. He will arrive in January. I believe he's the first early enrollee to come from that school. You saw last week he had the viral clip of him doing a 310 or 315, 310 pound power clean while listening to the Eagles, which the fact that he was listening to Take It Easy while doing power cleans, I thought was pretty funny. So how I'm really interested that, like, clearly Vandagriff is the most interesting name, I think, around the Georgia football program going forward, because if you don't see the development you want to see out of the quarterbacks for the rest of the year, which could very well happen, JT Daniels could not be the guy a lot of people thought he would be. And it could look more like what you saw the last couple of games for quarterback to sort of finish out the season. If that's the case, Vandagriff, he comes in January, he's going to learn the playbook, he's going to do all this sort of things. And how much does he push potentially for that 2021 starting job? Now, I will say right now, before he gets to campus, I don't know if he can win that starting job, or even if you necessarily want him starting week 1 against Clemson in 2021. That is who Georgia is tentatively set to open next season against, because that Clemson team is still going to be very, very good and very, very not fun to play against if you are a quarterback making your first career start. But if Georgia comes in and says, hey, Brock, you're a guy. You're the guy that's going to be the Trevor Lawrence, the Justin Fields of our program. You're going to be the quarterback that rises all tides and elevates things. I think that'd be a big step for Kirby Smart. Now, I will caution, just because you have that with a 5-star quarterback doesn't always necessarily mean it works out. I think you can look specifically at Oklahoma and Auburn, 2 teams that have really bought in and believed in Spencer Rattler and Bo Nix, who were 2 5-stars in the 2019 class. And those programs have not sort of seen that bump. Auburn in particular, Nix has certainly had his ups and downs there. So, yeah, Tom Lavelle, he brings up Dabo. He sort of did it with Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson, where they played a little bit in those first and early games of the year, but by the end of those freshman seasons, they were starting for those teams. And ultimately, with both Watson and Lawrence, you saw it pay off with championships. And that's, I think, something similar you're looking for from Georgia there. Now, unfortunately, if you're making a quarterback change, it probably means that you're not totally getting everything you want, either whoever the starting quarterback is next year, whether it's JT Daniels, Stetson Bennett, Dwan Mathis, or Carson Beck. Because all those guys can come back with sort of because they all have extra years of eligibility. So how that sort of plays out and what it means for Vandagriff is easily, to me, the most interesting offseason discussion point, and where sort of things go from there. You're at about the 24-25 minute mark. We'll take a few more comments and questions and get out of here on a Tuesday night. My name's Connor Riley. We're talking the latest of Georgia football. Talked to Kirby Smart. Was once again very keeping cards close to the vest for their quarterback position this coming Saturday. He was asked about the black jerseys, any chance we see those. He was non-committal to that. Said there were some leadership decisions that were going to have to be made and whether we see them. If I were a betting man, I think there's a chance that we do see them on Saturday. They pull them out. You look back to when Kirby Smart wore those back in 2016 against Louisiana Lafayette. He wanted to give his team some juice, and I certainly think black jerseys at night in Sanford Stadium, I think certainly would qualify a situation for that. So I'll be interested to sort of see what they do there, but I ultimately do think that that's what they decide to do with the black jerseys. So I'll be interested to see sort of what the reaction is, how things look, and where they go from there. So let's see. Questions, comments. thoughts on Saturday? Anything you've sort of seen? Hold on. There was one question that I want to make sure. Maybe they took it down, but someone had said, I don't know if I'll be happy or sad if JT Daniels comes in and throws for 250 and 300 yards. This is something BA mentioned on our Cover 4 broadcast last week. Ultimately, well, sure, you could grovel and be upset about how things turned out. If JT Daniels looks like a competent and starting college quarterback and a guy that can be that for you in 2021, and he shows strides and he shows steps, you have to be happy with that. Given the quagmire that this position has seen over the past year and a half, and really even a little bit longer, going back to the 2018 season, if you get clear, concrete evidence that JT Daniels is your guy this season, you should be happy with that. Because while some will rightfully be upset with the way Georgia's defense was playing against Florida and against Alabama, it wouldn't be a total surprise if Georgia did get better quarterback play in those games, if they still don't end up playing them out. I mean, against Florida, they were just so banged up. And in Florida, that first half, scoring 38 points is just that can't happen, especially for a defense that is as talented as this Georgia one is. There you go, Chad Buchanan. Now it comes up. So, Connor, Brian Kephart here. Are you able to comment on which QB on our roster right now you root for to be the guy to develop for next year? I've said before, I think you have to find out what you have in JT Daniels at this point. Kirby has made it very clear that he is healthy. He has said that his mobility has gotten better and better over the course of the year. And I think you need to try and figure out and find out who he is and what he can do for this team, and ultimately start getting him reps for that 2021 season in Todd Monken's offense, live game action reps. I know a lot of people want to see Carson Beck. You have to figure out what you have in Daniels first before I think you sort of turn things over to Carson Beck. And if Daniels doesn't play well, if he looks uncomfortable out there, maybe at that point you turn to Carson and sort of say, hey, you're a freshman. Let's find out what you have. So, will Jordan Davis and Arian Smith play? Jerry Dogs fan asks. Kirby was very dodgy when answering injury questions. Status is still sort of the same with Davis. I wonder if because Mississippi State is such a pass-happy offense and they do not run the ball at all, I wonder if that maybe convinces Kirby to hold off another week and give Jordan Davis another week to heal, because I don't know how much he would normally be playing anyway against an offense that wants to throw it 60, 70 times a game. While he is I think a capable pass rusher, I would look for a lot more Jalen Carter, Trayvon Walker as sort of those interior, Devontae Wyatt as sort of those interior pass rushers against Mississippi State on Saturday. So, and Arian Smith, yeah, he continues to get better. I think the fact that he traveled against Florida, I think, says a lot. And he's had a little bit more time to get out there, and given some of the other injuries they have at wide receiver, he was not asked about Arian Smith, but I do like to think that there's a chance he'd see the field on Saturday, and that'd be big for Georgia because they just don't. There are not a lot of guys in college football that have Arian Smith style speed. So, Jacob Phillips, Jordan Davis, and Richard LeCounte are huge impact players who we have to replace next year. Does the UGA defense decline next year, missing those guys? Yeah, probably. I think defense is one of those things where year to year it's not as stable as offense. So you've sort of seen this year where Georgia had a great defense a year ago, and they've even regressed a little bit. They're still, I think, a very good defense, but they're clearly not what they were a season ago. And because of that, when the offense is still what the offense is, that's why I think you've seen the struggles that you've seen this year. I do like what they have at safety. I think Chris Smith is a sort of J.R. Reed type in that he might not be the playmaker that Richard LeCounte has turned out to be, but he is a solid guy you can have back there. And then with Lewis Seen coming back as well, I think he's going to emerge into that Richie LeCounte role. And the defensive line, they don't have a guy to replace Jordan Davis, but Jordan Davis is a one of one. There are not 6'6" guys at 320 pounds who move like Jordan Davis does. But I think you saw some solid things from Zion Logue, Bill Norton, a couple of the other young defensive linemen these past couple of weeks. While, again, they don't have a Jordan Davis replica, I do think they have enough to sort of patch things together and figure it out. So let's see. So Kenneth Wiggins, what if the defense declines slightly and the offense takes a huge leap? That almost certainly means that Georgia is better. Georgia's offense is not great, and has not been great. And once if and when they do turn that corner and start looking like a better offense that is constantly hitting explosive plays, that's just going to raise the ceiling so much for what this team can do. And, well, yes, the Clemson game is tough. Next year, their SEC schedule is not quite as tough. And Florida, you think no Kyle Trask. You wonder what maybe Florida looks like next year, if that's any different. I know Emory Jones has played a good bit, so he's not totally inexperienced, but he's not playing like Kyle Trask is either. And you look at LSU, because I know this weekend coming out, there were some similar stat comparisons between Joe Burrow a year ago and Kyle Trask right now. You've seen that while sure you can still roll up points from time to time, replacing Burrow is just an impossible task for LSU, and I wonder if maybe Florida has the same thing. So, Chad Buchanan, yeah, he brings up a big name to know. Tyrion Arnold, 4-star safety out of Tallahassee, one of the bigger sort of recruiting targets remaining. Georgia is set to learn where one of the biggest, and in my opinion, one of the more important targets for this 2021 class, Shmuel Munden, he's set to announce tomorrow. Jeff Santel and I will both be there on hand at Peldon County High School. He's set to announce around the 8:30, 8:40 window, so Dog Nation will probably go live at 8:15. So if they land him, that's big, and I believe it'll bump him up, I think, borderline top 5 class. They can still climb and have room to grow and add to this class. I don't know if it finishes top 1, top 2, top 3, but landing a player like Shmuel Munden is big for the future of this Georgia defense, just given what they are set to lose at linebacker. Let's see. Let's do one more good question here. We've gone about 33, 32 minutes. Gary McConnell brings up Aziz should have a big day. Yeah, they're only going to rush 3, so I'll be interested to see how they rotate Adam Anderson, Nolan Smith, Aziz Ojolari around there. And if they just say, hey, just go get the quarterback. Now, granted, Mississippi State's going to try and get the ball out quick. And Aziz mentioned tonight, they've got to rush with their hands up to try and knock those quick passes down, because as quick as those guys are, if they're just getting rid of the ball as soon as they can on quick slants, there's not a whole lot of pass rush you can do. But given they probably don't have to play the run a whole lot on Saturday, I would look for the outside linebackers to play well. And Georgia right now, they lead the SEC in sacks. So they're doing something right production-wise there. So let's see. One more good question. Where does Georgia ultimately finish in the recruiting rankings? It obviously is really going to depend on if they are able to somehow land Corey Foreman and Mason Smith. If they land both of those, and then they land a Xavier Sori, a Tyrion Arnold, I think they have the upward mobility to potentially get to a number 1 class. But ultimately, I think they probably finish in that 3 or 4 range this year, which, again, is still a very good elite recruiting class. But the number 1 this year, it might just be a little out of reach. Ohio State and Alabama are putting together historically good recruiting classes. So let's see. Hey, Clarence Dawson, 33 minutes. I'm a busy man. I got stuff to do. I got to be up early tomorrow to help cover Shmuel Munden. So, I'm no Mike Griffith. I can't go hours on end. So, let's see if I can get one more good question. We'll call it a day. And if not, we'll just wrap it up either way. So, let's see. Yeah, you know what? We're going to call it a night. So, thanks everyone for tuning in. Let's, a lot of stuff going on these next couple of days. Got the Munden announcement tomorrow morning around 8:15 on the Dog Nation pages. You've got, before the head, just to recap the Munden decision, what happened tomorrow night. You've got Dog Nation Daily at 10. I imagine we will be wall-to-wall coverage with the Munden and as well as the JT Daniels quarterback situation going forward. We've got Cover 4 on Thursday night at 7:30. Friday Night Mike with Mike Griffith. Those are always entertaining. He always brings it. You've got that on Friday night. And you've got the Georgia game on Saturday, 7:30 SEC Network. As of right now, it looks like that game is going to be played. Georgia just really needs to get back on the field and give us something else to talk about instead of sort of just spinning the wheels here. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in. My name is Connor Riley. I work for Dog Nation. Hope everyone is having a great night and has a great rest of the week. See you when I see you.